Доброго дня, колеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Welcome in our new CMC regarding our everyday briefing on reforms in Ukraine. Yesterday, the President of Ukraine signed the law 43A regarding the regulation of some of the provisions of the E-VAT administration. Earlier, this topic was known under number 1173, and the draft law, may I remind you, is a part of administration of the taxes in Ukraine. This is one of the measures of the reform in the taxation administration in Ukraine. The government actually proposed the electronic system, which allows to achieve a more transparent and efficient administration of this VAT tax, and there was a long discussion between the government and business regarding the efficiency of the system, and a kind of compromise was reached, and they corrected a number of the provisions in those rules which found their reflection in this new draft law. And we continue to discuss the progress of this reform, since this is one of the elements which is going to impact the further tax reform. So we invited experts who participate in that discussion and voice alternative points of view. So I would like to give the floor to one of the experts to actually express their independent point of view, how this law is going to correct the mistakes, and how efficient this new draft law or this kind of electronic administration could be efficient and could be user-applied in our conditions in Ukraine. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like, and I always emphasize this, that the issue of the E-VAT issue consists of two parts. Part one, electronic administration, which is actually one of the tax invoices for the taxpayers prepared in the electronic format, and they are registered in the single register of the tax invoices, and started to it was in force since July 1, and it was quite efficient. In many of the accountants actually was their opinion regarding that, and in order to how to process those tax invoices, how to send them, and how to receive them from the counter agents, and how it actually functioned, with the exception of some of the taxpayers who had a very big turnover of the tax, big amount of the tax invoices. At the date when this system was introduced, we didn't have the consensus regarding the exchange of the taxpayers, so we had the situation when the taxpayer worked in different systems regarding the transfer of the data, for example, Medoxanat or some others. In this case, they could not exchange the tax invoices. So this is part one, which could be assessed positively. The second part, which was introduced on July 1, and this is mandatory, let's say, support of the VAT in order to actually prepare the generated tax invoice. This system makes provision in order to make it impossible to form the risk tax credit or the fake false tax credit. In order to write out this tax invoice, he has to put a certain amount of money to put it in a certain account which is open in the treasury. And this system, in fact, was in force starting July 1. And here we see the biggest problems and a lot of dissatisfaction on the part of the business, even critical dissatisfaction, which is as follows. Today, half a year before the period from when we transferred from the test regime to the, let's say, to the full regime, the fiscal system had to analyze the operation of the system to come up with its to determine drawbacks and shortcomings and produce necessary maintenance corrections. Despite the fact that working group working and was prepared at the end of June to present those corrections and amendments, but there was some kind of machination, or I would say the fraud on the part of the Ministry of Finance. They included the norm of cancellation special regime for the agricultural workers, which never been discussed in the group. They never reached the consensus on that issue. Actually, we didn't touch that issue, and they put it as a norm. As a result, this draft law never been considered, and since it has never been considered, we started to work from in July without any amendments. What was the result of it? Number one, many taxpayers in that period, despite the positive payments to the budget and the absence of any kind of the remarks on the fiscal service, they had some kind of a negative balance according to the formula which is provided for by the law. In order to generate the tax invoice, they had to put into their account this kind of negative balance, and the sum was a result of this formula. They are huge. To some companies or enterprises, to generate the tax invoice for 2,000 hryvnia, they had to put to their accounts between 100 and 200,000 hryvnia, and in this way they actually eliminated the circulation fund of those companies. And speaking about those companies who communicate, they had to pay this VAT as compared to their average monthly payments, which exceeded the average payment 4 or 5 times. This actually led to the elimination of the circulating funds of those companies and the deterioration of their operation, because they had to delay with the payment of the salaries, and they had to postpone some of other payments. And this situation holds not only for those companies, others as well. Taking consideration available situation today, and since we are living through the summertime, they actually suspended their activities. As a result, they stopped to load their products, and they postponed it to some later period, and providing also they suspend providing services in order not to come across this situation, not to overpay the money. So this is the result, which was the situation on as of July 1st this year. Also speaking, due to the fact that the number of the remarks and the comments was such a huge, part of business, because this was not detrimental so much to the tax payers, because they are gaps, they actually somehow have a more complex scheme, because this was really a deterioration for the fair taxpayers. And that's why we had the alternative draft law to postpone this term 1 quarter more in order to improve the situation which is available today, owing to the negative certain fraud on the part of the manager of the tax committee, due to the fact that in the tax committee of the Verkhovna Rada, they voted for 2960, which provided for the several things to postpone the terms to the January 2016, and also the report on the state fiscal system regarding the operation of the system. By the way, when they put the question to Mykhailo, whether the report to Mykhailo, she said that that report has been already completed and submitted to Mr. Grossman, but Grossman is just the speaker of Verkhovna Rada, but not the Verkhovna Rada per se. So nobody actually has seen that report. Nobody knows anything about the drawbacks and shortcomings. But anyway, the committee voted for this draft law. However, they actually put to the vote only the draft law, which was not supported by this committee. In fact, later the deputies, actually parliamentarians, voted for that because it provided some of the corrections of the available mistakes, and they introduced some provision regarding the agricultural workers, and it was positive. So the changes introduced. The most important thing is nullification of the formula, which means, or reset to zero. That means that the negative or positive values which were formed as of July 1st this year, they actually they boil down to zero. As a result of some errors or mistakes in correct operation of the formula, some other let's say, aspects. We had the situation with a positive value, which was very often used while generating their tax invoices. They actually improved on some of the technical mistakes in that formula. I would like to know here that starting from July 1st this year, the State Fiscal Service introduced the formula for overdraft. I would like to say that according to the law didn't stipulate it as of July 1st this year. So they did that without any authorities given to them. But this is a positive thing for business. Speaking of that, the RPR actually proposed this because we believe that if the system already started to operate in this case, and actually we proposed overdraft almost 1 year back, that we had to make provision for that. If the payer permanently pays all liabilities, permanently he has to have some sum to the amount of money which he paid. Because business process is not, let's say, streamlined, or let's say, equally could have different indicators of the load at the beginning of the month or in the end of the month. So if it's kind of uniform, this is one thing, and if not, it's kind of disbalance. So we would like to propose to pay this overdraft and to smooth off or level off some of those jumps in there, so that the business would not actually send that negative impact which they have now. In our draft law, 71A1 actually provided for cancellation of some, let's say, discrepancies. First of all, we are talking about the illegal and ungrounded, unjustified deprivation of the expiry of the E-VAT, because they have this kind of status 9 without any warning, without any grounds for that today. Actually, the tax inspector calls him and said, we didn't find your, according to your legal address, and we actually give you the status 9, which means, most important, impossibility to register the tax invoices and not obtain on the tax invoices. In fact, if you are deprived of the VAT payer status, you'll be given the additional tax 20%. You have to pay it. This is the important negative aspect which we try to eliminate. Next.
Secondly, we try to get rid of STA's authority to cancel the tax credit. If a tax credit is secured with money, there should be no authority to cancel it. It shall be necessary to clear the situation with the issuer of the tax invoice. It was not considered as well. Another yet important moment is that the legislation currently provides for cancellation of tax credits whenever rules of tax invoice issuance have been violated. We already know this practice, and both accountants and directors know that for quite a substantial period of time the tax authorities were really acting strange by imposing additional strange regulations, like left indent for the proper name of the company. If centered or elsewhere, your tax invoice is null and void, and your tax credit can be annulled. That was ridiculous, and we tried to eliminate this provision because it's really a matter of corrupt acts on behalf of fiscal officials in an attempt to cancel tax credits. And because of that, we consider that test regime should be continued, and the state's fiscal service and the Ministry of Finance would not agree with us. Because of that, Only the draft 2173A was adopted, and we think that the current system that now operates has a negative impact on the economy. It really deals harsh blow on cash flows between companies. I think my colleague has more to add to here. Please welcome Mykhailo Sokolov. Good afternoon. I'm a bit late, and pardon for repeating some of the words of my colleague if this happens. I'd like to tell you more about what needs to be done to improve the system, and I will do my best to outline not just technical errors in the multitude, but I will rather speak of things of principle that need to be done to make the system work, not just in terms of tax collection, but also in terms of letting businesses operate, so that this piece of legislation would stimulate the economy development. The first issue we have is about the drain of cash flow. There was an attempt to resolve this by introducing overdraft, but effectively the authors failed to reach their target. First of all, because there are not many enterprises here with a stable system of nearly identical tax payments on a monthly basis. We have many seasonal differences and related fluctuations, and this overdraft will keep stable for these enterprises and companies, resulting in them having either surplus or insufficient in terms of their tax payments and tax liabilities. Secondly, the problem with overdraft is that the overdraft itself is the amount to which our liabilities can be registered in amount of a monthly payment. But the problem again is that the deadline is day 20th of each month. That is, whenever we are approaching the end of month, we may come to the end of overdraft. This means that starting from the day 1st of the next month, we'll have to put more money to our special tax account to keep rolling, knowing that the money will be staying on this budgetary account for a month. And then again, on day 20th, we'll have to pay for our past obligations, and we risk having our money frozen on that account. That will be just, there will be a dead weight. The first thing that we will press on is that overdraft, or the amount to which tax liabilities should be registered, should be equal to 2 months of tax payments. This will allow us getting rid of seasonal fluctuations. Another yet thing, the whole system E-VAT administration has been to eliminate tax credits. It was the basic ideology behind the system, whether it was about monetary liabilities or the related formulas. But again, if the system fails to provide this, who needs the system? It only creates additional burden, administrative burden, on businesses and companies. And STA representatives nevertheless state that the system works with no tax credits pending. If so, then we still have the problem that we may not get rid of tax credits as it is, because it has been covered by a relative non-monetary pledge. And all prospects of economic development in this country are related to export possibilities and exporters now and again come against situations where the tax credits and problems with the acknowledgement of these credits by fiscal authorities, despite their attempts to explain that they have already paid the due. So if fiscal authorities say that the system is right, correct, and operates as intended, then you, again, people in the STA and the Minfin, you need to acknowledge that tax credit amounts are okay and fine. Tax invoices contain all necessary data about the goods, and yes, if there are any errors found in this invoice, then tax credit can be annulled, but again only by court decision, or whenever the taxpayer has willfully and openly acknowledged the errors committed. Anyway, it should not be the case when the state gets the money and the taxpayer gets rid of his tax credit. To put it short, if you want to put the system of VAT payment and tax administration in good order, then we need to be frank and open with everyone. If taxpayers try to stick to the rules, the state needs to stick to the rules as well. Because there are cases when even courts acknowledge that the state has not acted in a right manner, and still the state declines from acknowledging it. Anyway, the state collects much more VAT than it has to repay. And if it is about fair play, the state should only retain the delta that it has the right to. Meanwhile, we see a situation that at times they would consider whether they have enough money to make the VAT repayments due. And this is not the right system to work in. You may change your budget if you have shortages with tax collections, but you may not be authorized to withhold VAT payments. Otherwise, it will be turnover tax that you're not authorized to collect.
One specification: when the state fiscal service representatives they were introduced as E-VAT administration, they were talking about the problems in planning the budget. We are talking about the assets of that part. If we are talking about the E-VAT administration system, does it allow to change the approach in order the compensation be maximum 100%, and that doesn't depend upon how the budget has been planned? We believe that this system makes it possible to do that, and we have to complete it in the way where it was introduced in one country, which is really operates. We have to introduce the account, or to open the account where all the money will be put on and from which all the expenditures will be taken, and only the balance of that must be taken to the budget. Then there will be no question about that. This is our RPR proposal. It's kind of copy of Azerbaijani system, I believe, because nowhere else they separate like that. Or separately the bank, or separate the account, everything accumulates there, and then the net difference goes to the budget. Let's do it this way, that will be fair. Now you take to the budget to what doesn't belong to you, and then you say we do not have enough money to compensate because we didn't plan that, so it was wrong planning. So it shouldn't depend on how much we export and import. It depends only how much is consumed within the country, because export minus import plus consumption, yes, you have your basis for the taxation. This is the domestic consumption, which is you can actually forecast or foresee, but you do it the wrong way. You plan all the VAT paid to you, then all the compensation. If you have more money paid, it's a positive balance, which is good. We can pay money, and it's natural. If import or export is growing, then we have to do something about, because the VAT is not the export tax. This is the tax on the domestic consumption exclusively. This is the essence of that. In case of proper planning, if you take into consideration on domestic consumption, then everything will be okay. And the system of balance will be satisfactory to you because this will give you what you planned, no less, no more. If the economy is going to grow and consumption inside the country will grow, yes, this will give you more, but do something in order to ensure this kind of growth of the consumption. Those are the things of principle thing, and there are some additional issues related to the effect how much correct this formula operates and how correctly this kind of the negative balance is taken into account. I have a question. This draft law was signed yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Yesterday was July 28th. Well, in fact, the kind of reset to the zero, of the formula must be in 3 days from now. So we have 3 days, 29th, 30th, and 31st. But I'm sorry, the law fixes the formula. It should be end on July 30th. So, okay. And then how we are going to make this delay the same date? Well, this is a question. I don't know how this is going to work. Maybe they will resolve this problem, but we'll see. One of the biggest problems of this law and the system of the whole that was adopted, somehow very promptly. They did not want to make the system operate during testing period, to make sure that everything's okay and everything works, and then only to launch it in full measure. But they did not want to do that. They said that they did not have enough money. But now they are facing risks when something may go wrong. And over the last half a year, we found out that there are a lot of problems here, and the Minister of Finance actually agreed with that. And the risks are shouldered now by the business, not by the state. Any questions? I have just a technical question. Please tell me, there were some proposals where I understand in the business actually came up with those proposals regarding the corrections which were reflected in the alternative draft law, and then you had some discussions with the negotiations. Can you say what part of what businesses raised, the issues were taken account in the draft law which was signed? Because during the negotiation of the approval, you were talking about the alternative draft law. Actually, only one norm, very important norm, but only one was implemented. We are talking about the let's say, no responsibility for some problems which are not the fault of the taxpayer. This norm was taken into consideration, which is correct, and we are blessed that they at least introduced this norm. I would like to add that they actually took into consideration some technical comments or remarks regarding the operation of the E-VAT administrative system. They took into consideration almost all the technical things, but if you're talking about the principle, the issues, they didn't touch upon that. So the state fiscal system did not want to hit to us. They would not agree to any proposal in order to eliminate their corruption possibilities, let's say opportunities. They said if there is the VAT credit, you cannot take that because this is supported by the money. They said no, it's not. We cannot do that. Why? Because we need that. So there are some of the very things of principle. Yeah, the technical issue I confirmed that the comments part of business regarding the lack of correctness of the work of some of the elements, they were taken into consideration. But again, business has to revisit a lot of things. For example, how the system is going to function under new conditions, nobody knows that. Another point, what business came across, only 15 days can use for the registration of the tax invoices. As a result, they had to replenish their VAT account even for those conditions during the testing period. What would be the case now? Nobody knows. So there are again technical issues, how they're going to level it off, how they're going to recognize those payments or not. So a lot of negative things, and those negative points or items I would refer to the lack of professionalism, if you will, or to put it honest, the team which dealt with the introduction of the E-VAT administration system, what they did not fail to correct, or what it pretends to reporting, etc., etc. Some decision must be taken regarding those issues.
With your permission, one more example. Since previous years, we've been left with a provision, legislative provision, that says that whenever a fiscal authority comes to your legal address and is unable to find a director there, you can have your VAT payer's certificate annulled. They could probably at some point in time it was the right provision, given that the fictitious company would not be able to issue legal tax invoices. But the situation has really changed these days, and it is no longer possible to just enter the unified register to issue this tax invoice without regular budget payments, etc. The question remains, why do we still have this purely corruption mechanism persistent? Because if you are assigned this telltale status 9 in this electronic system, you immediately turn into having to pay 20% turnover tax rather than the VAT tax. This is a clear attempt to shake money out of companies. If we are to create and build a fair company in a fair country, then something needs to be changed. Thank you, colleagues, for these comments. I think the work that you are waging in this system really paves the way for an updated system to start work since 2016. And skeptical remarks you have voiced clearly show the need to join efforts of the STA and the Minfin to further improve electronic administration on VAT and related system. I think that in many cases the work to improve electronic tax administration system is a living process that has barely started. Many things remain to be done to make the system really user-friendly. Thank you.